the number of students at that school, both with parents dropping off kids, student drivers, and then the buses that also access from the west gate. We did add a fourth CSO that in late spring to perform a different function, but we can always look at reevaluating that and redeploying that person to the field as well moving forward, dependent on what our approach ends up being. So one of the misconceptions, and I've dealt with this a few times, especially I spoke to the parent group at Spruce Creek Elementary a while back, and this program was designed, and the Vice Mayor will be able to tell you, over a decade ago, where they began utilizing CSOs. But the idea behind it was for traffic flow, and that's the reason you see them on some of those major roadways. And the idea was that as traffic begins to back up, their job is to then move in, help the parents exit so that they can alleviate the congestion on the roadway. I'll go back to Spruce Creek again. If you notice, the times are also correlate to the times that people are trying to get to work. So if you live anywhere south of Taylor, south of Taylor on Spruce Creek and back in that area, and you're trying to get to I-95, even with the CSOs in place directing traffic, there's a bottleneck in front of the high school, and it's going to take you some time. I think the question I get a lot, or you'll hear sometimes say, is, well, the CSO showed up late to the school zone started at 7, and then they left early because it goes till 8. Their target is to when traffic congestion is its worst. From historical knowledge, we know that generally the beginning of the school zone traffic still flows until about 7:25, and then it runs consistent until about 7:45, 7:50, and then the CSOs will move on to their next location. And as I mentioned, this is what's been in effect now for, from what I can tell, easily over a decade, if not longer. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. At one point, so I will look at this, at one point, obviously, when we were looking at all of our staffing levels and what could we do to supplement our patrol officers, we started to look at, how the CSOs are being utilized, because by policy they can actually do other things that we don't use them for. Take reports, they could be trained to handle crash investigations, which then alleviates some of the patrol responsibilities. I did look at doing that, but we decided not to do it, and we left them in place doing what they're doing and just work through our staffing issues as is. But in doing so, one of the things we looked at is, and this was going back probably a year and a half ago, what does the rest of the county look like? And at that time, our traffic unit conducted a survey, and we found that of all the public schools in Volusia County, only 8 schools hand-directed traffic at or near the school itself. And of those 8 schools, 4 are the ones in Port Orange that we're already doing. So that came out as part of it, was we started to look at those things. So, if moving forward that, we want to take a larger role with our CSOs, obviously we would need to look at adding additional personnel, and then the equipment that obviously goes with that decision, which would include vehicles, equipment, and everything else that goes with the position. In addition to those things, our motor unit completes a biannual school zone compliance survey, which is regulated by Florida state statute and guided by Manual of Uniform Traffic Control, which devices, which you'll hear usually on the traffic engineering side, and by us as frequently referred to as MUTCD, which defines what needs to be in school zones as far as signage, the crosswalks, everything that's involved in to meet state requirements. It doesn't mean anything over and above. It just does that school zone meet requirements. So our motor unit does that every 2 years. The last one was in 2022. We are getting ready, actually, now that school is out, we will be going out for our 2024 study, which will be part of our overall evaluation, as we're going to talk about tonight, of looking at all the schools themselves. Again, the purpose of the survey is to determine that everything within that school complies with state statute and the MUTCD guidelines. If they're not, our traffic unit compiles a report and sends it to whatever entity is responsible for that school zone. Some would be, if it's a municipal street, would be the city of Port Orange. If it's a county road, obviously to Volusia County. The only school we have in a state road is Port Orange Elementary, which is obviously state. Again, this has come up as well, and I know many are aware of this. Port Orange does not have any crossing guards, and we do not control where they are assigned throughout the county. So it's not a Port Orange function. I think that's another misconception, and I think maybe there's confusion between the CSOs and crossing guards, but we do not have a crossing guard function in Port Orange. So as far as next steps, the city manager, I'm not going to step on his presentation, but we are obviously looking at all of our 10 schools in Port Orange. Traffic unit is going to conduct our 2024 school zone compliance survey. And in that survey is where we also look into some of the issues that have come up in the past, right, as far as signage. And I'll use Sugar Mill again as an example. There was back and forth on what we could and could not enforce because the signs say no parking, right? But the no parking signs were on school board private property. So one of the things, that a recommendation we can make is that we change those signs out to now say no standing, no stopping, no parking, which then gives us more recourse to where if a parent stops in the right of way and is impeding traffic or stops in the crosswalk, that allows us then to take enforcement action. So those will be the types of things that the traffic unit will look for as they're evaluating each school zone. In addition to that, we're going to talk about the meetings that we have upcoming, but I also I don't want people to think that there's been no dialogue. We do have conversations with the school board, with particularly myself and Captain Todd Smith. For me, he's been a great asset. I can pick up a phone and he'll generally answer. If not, he calls me right back. So there is communication back and forth. We're able to get questions answered. And even before we started talking about evaluating all the schools, we'd already been in contact with the school board in reference to Horizon Elementary, who's looking at doing some changes to their parent drop-off and maybe flipping their bus loop, which is also needed, right? And that'll be part of our survey as well. But those conversations were already happening prior to the unfortunate tragedy at Sugar Mill. So my goal is to keep those conversations and not have that momentum stop while we go ahead and start now to discuss what can we do going forward. So I did have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with the sheriff's office, but as I mentioned, I happened to be at a conference with Sheriff Chitwood and his staff and Captain Smith just these last week. So we were able to have some of those conversations already together one-on-one. So we went ahead and canceled the meeting for tomorrow because there's another meeting scheduled with all the powers that be next Thursday. I think that's going to be a better avenue for discussion because you'll have representatives from the school board, you'll have representatives from the city, the police department, from the sheriff's office at that particular meeting. So I think that's the better avenue to where we kick it off so that everyone's in the same room at the same time. As we mentioned, so I mentioned the meeting that we have coming up. We also have some safety meetings that have been ongoing, and there's other meetings in regards to crossing guards that we attend on a regular basis. I don't believe the next actual meeting for the crossing guard committee is till sometime in July. Right. I don't think a date has been set yet, but we will obviously be at that one as well. So some of the things, and I know the city manager is going to touch on this, that we've been asked about, is the CSOs, additional CSOs. I've had, been asked about our volunteers and policing, our VIPs potentially being out there. Is there some iteration where that potentially works? Maybe. I'm very cautious with our VIPs to put them in a situation. For me, in a situation where you need staffing and you need staffing to be there, I don't know that volunteerism is your first avenue. Honestly, it's great if people want to do that, but you cannot expect them. It's not their job, and if things come up in their family, you still have to have a backup plan for those situations. Mm-hmm. So that's my hesitancy, and especially with our VIPs, because we've had to where we ask a lot of them already, right? Most of you are at that annual. They put in thousands of hours of their own time for the city, just in the special events that they handle already. So to ask them to be present at all of our schools, for several hours a day, twice a day, I just don't want to overload them. So that's my position with our VIPs, but it's not something that cannot be discussed. Obviously, we know that at other schools, there are school personnel that handle those types of traffic control. So that's another discussion that could be had out there, and also there are volunteer groups, right? Unfortunately, when you have a tragedy, you see a lot of people want to step forward. You know, it takes an event like that, but so if it's something to the effect that we help train people in traffic control, I wouldn't put them in the roadways. Obviously, we don't want anyone to be out standing in the middle of the roadway that hasn't been officially trained. But as far as the sidewalk crosswalks themselves, maybe that's something that could be approached. I tell you, with me, you look at on the crime prevention side, right? We talk about crime prevention through environmental design. What kind of what can you do to mitigate, with your business, with your home? Well, I think this is an approach also with traffic safety, and especially with the schools, right? To me, that's your best option personally, is that if you can guarantee the safety of the students to get to and from and off the campus without relying on some type of personnel or staffing or volunteer to be there, that's your best option, because then you don't have to worry about whether an officer gets a critical incident call and gets pulled from that zone, right? Because we still have a responsibility to respond to critical incidents. Our patrol officers also double as SWAT officers, so they get called out for a SWAT call out, or if we're serving a search warrant. So to guarantee that person will be there is say yes, that's our goal, but if a critical incident comes up, if it's a life-saving incident, realistically they're going to have to respond to it. We cannot not respond to emergency calls for service. And then again, there's other things as far as technology goes that I've had brief conversations with, but I just don't know what the appetite is. And even at the school board, there's some stuff that activate automatically as far as alerting people that someone's in a crosswalk. There's now Florida passed just recently the ability to conduct speed enforcement in school zones, specifically school zones, through cameras. I know there's some challenges already with that in the state of Georgia. So far it's been upheld, but it is here in Florida now. There's several companies that started off with just one, but now I think they're up to 3. So it's another discussion, obviously, that's out there. So I know the city manager has more. I didn't want to, I know he has a whole presentation. So that's a brief overview of some of the things we've been discussing. Do you have any questions?
Can you just touch on, I appreciate all that information. Can you just touch I know you and I have had some conversation about another school out on Williamson where we're seeing a building of a problem and people can't get on campus because the school is maintaining the campus gates shut. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we have inquired about this, they're saying that is now a policy because of I believe it's the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act. Is that am I right on that?
That is correct.
And that they cannot open those gates. And so what's happening is parents who maybe need to be at work by 8:30 or what have you are wanting to drop kids off an hour early in some cases or more. And there's only so much stacking room out on Williamson Boulevard or any of these schools. Can you just kind of touch on that, what we know if you can talk about it, is the school board looking at options where, because like that particular school out there has got a huge stacking area that's just not being utilized because they're not opening the gate. Can you just touch on that, Chief?
Correct. And so as you mentioned, we saw something similar to what we're seeing at Sugar Mill out west several years ago. We had one incident since I've been here, away from the school itself, but also involving vehicles leaving the development and children on bikes on the sidewalk. I think in that instance, we also, crossing guard was requested, but it didn't fit the criteria because it wasn't at a crosswalk, and the accident did occur. It was a driveway again, but different situation. But to answer your question, yes. So Marjorie Stoneman Douglas changed a lot, changed everything for school security. It changed the SRO programs throughout the state, requiring security, above all else, and to have the, armed school safety officer, if not an SRO, on campus. So you do get that response, right? Because and I'm not an expert, right? The Stoneman Douglas Commission came out after I stopped dealing with SROs, but the thought process is that they cannot open the campus up to students if there's not a safety officer, an armed safety officer there, or an SRO. So we have had that, right, where that school in particular does have the ability to go ahead and move at least as many vehicles off the roadway into the lane, but we were told that we could not open the campus due to not having a safety officer there until, and I don't remember what their time frame was, I think it's 30 minutes before the actual start of school, was the response we got. So that's another thing we can bring up in some of these discussions with and in these meetings, like, you know, what else can we do as far as those types of things. With Sugar Mill, I'm not sure, honestly, where that's going to be part of the investigation, but yes, you are correct. We've seen it there, and we've frequently been told that the gates cannot be open until a certain time frame. So,
because they have to staff it. I think a lot of the physical plant things, questions like that, let's let Wayne get through his presentation because he's going to talk about that a little bit. But after that, any questions council has of both the chief and the city manager will allow that. And we're certainly going to take public comment after that. And after we take public comment, and public comment is going to consist of listening. And then after we go through public comment, it's going to come back to us to ask those questions of staff as well. So, anybody have any? Do we have anything else for the chief right now before Wayne starts?
I can wait.
Okay, we'll get it all on the table. Mr. City Manager.
Okay. You've heard from the chief that there's been a lot of conversation and gathering of resources in the last week. We thought it was really important to make sure that anybody that can bring a solution or assistance to this to the table was part of it. So we've done as much talking to everybody as we can. As he said, we've got a meeting scheduled next week where the sheriff, county, school board, all of our staffs are going to come together face to face to have those conversations. One of the things we wanted to do, though, is pull every bit of information we can together to make that meeting more meaningful in the meetings that will follow. Obviously, that one meeting won't be the end of it. I kind of approach this, there's a form of budgeting that you might hear about called zero-based budgeting, where at the beginning of the year, you don't just start with what money you have and talk about what's new. You go back to the beginning and talk about it from the beginning at the zero base. Do we really need these things? I think the approach to this situation warrants more of a zero-based analysis. And I get that there are certain committees and certain roles and certain policies that, well, this is what we do. But I think at a minimum, we need to at least ask the question. And you've heard a couple of these comments, and I'll touch on as we go through. Crossing guards typically cross across streets, not on sidewalks. We had a problem on a sidewalk. Maybe the question is my understanding is that there were policies that committee didn't put a crossing guard there because it was a sidewalk across a driveway and not crossing a street. Maybe we readdress that policy, at least ask the question, is that a valid policy? Do we want to keep it? So I think you go back to the zero base and at least test every assumption. Is this the right way to do it ahead of time? So that's what we were trying to do, is build enough information so we can start from zero instead of going, and I get some of them are going to be harder. The Stoneman Douglas things and the safety, that may be a little bit harder to get through, but the policies on who does what and where, at least ask that question and have somebody readdress it from the beginning, because some of these committees have been around for decades, and so the roots of why those policies were built may not be clear to all of us today. So on the next slide, the first thing we've done is we've gone in and put together, and the map is not, it's not intended to be a discussion PowerPoint graphic. It's a digital image that we're using to actually do research. So this is a citywide map with insets of all 10 schools, and you can pull them all out as digital images. And we collect data, we're going to keep putting it in there. But the idea is when you're sitting in a room with a bunch of decision makers, we have all this information in front of us to help make the decision. So as we put all this together, we looked at all the schools, we went to the areas immediately adjacent to the schools, identified all the crossing areas touching the school property. So I think in our 10 schools, there's 64 crossings. About a little more than half are crossings of roads, and a little less than half are sidewalks going across driveways. So we're looking at all the different ways that our students cross something where there might be a conflict with a vehicle. We looked at the enrollment at the schools, the traffic counts on the roads. We've been looking at where we have safety signs, where there are flashing lights, where the school zones are, what are the speed limits. One of the other things that we put on this map, and you can kind of see the purple lines that pop out, and there's a couple of them that are green or orange. I think they are on this map, orange. So those are the indication of, over the last decade or so, the city's done about $1.5 million worth of projects on safety improvements on sidewalks to get people to the schools. And what stands out of this one is that a lot of these aren't right at the schools. There's several of them a pretty good distance away from the school. The kids are still crossing roads and driveways a long way away from the actual school itself. So I think it's important to look at the broader nature of those. And some of these are fairly big projects that have made an impact, but that's 10 years worth of work on sidewalks just to see that amount of work. So we wanted to make sure that we were not missing anything when we were going through that. As you heard from the chief, there's 2 committees that are out there. The School Crossing Evaluation Committee that focuses on the location of crossing guards, and then there's a community traffic safety team that's more of an accident-based group that deals with solutions to areas where there have been problems with accidents. So there's a Florida Department of Transportation person who's an expert at that, and a lot of law enforcement officials. So these committees provide resources to help us with what might be the right thing to do as we go forward. I think I've covered on the map. Also we did put the stars where the community safety officers are, so you can see which schools have them. So we're trying to make this a database that has everything we can possibly have on a school. So when you're sitting in a room with people, it makes it easy to come up with solutions. So obviously, the more input we get, the stronger that data becomes to make better decisions. The next slide is a list of improvements. It's not an exhaustive list. I tried to group them by areas that are easier to understand them under, whether it's a physical improvement, a personnel improvement, or a policy improvement. It's obvious from this list, some of them are easier to do quicker than others. Some will take more time. Obviously know that there's a whole lot of people that the answer is don't do government to this and bureaucratize it and take a year to do it. Some people are going to want some immediate solutions. Others are going to take a little more time. I think that there's a way to mix that, sort of what we did after the hurricane with the flooding. There are certain things we could get out and do immediately, and there's other things that we need to take more time to work on. So this is not an exhaustive list. What we were trying to do is bring data and ideas to the table when we sit down with everybody and start working on it. The next slide just shows how collaboration is so important. So there's no one agency fully in charge. Multiple different responsibilities when it comes to protecting our children on the streets and schools and our communities. So we all have to work together to solve these problems. And so I just tried to list the areas where what would be ours, what would be the school. So as we start working on these solutions, why we need to be in a room together and not trying to solve it as independent entities. And then at the bottom, I still think it's really important. As we were digging through the history of all these committees and trying to find anything from the past that could help us go forward, I did see a number of schools that were doing outreach and education on how to drive better and what, at some point, in addition to all the things that we can do, people still have to drive safer and take better care of what they do when they're in those zones. So in addition to everything we do, I do think it's important that we all come together and work on driver behavior as part of our solution. So I can answer questions as you want to go into more detail, but I thought that was a brief overview, and then I can turn it back to council for any questions you have of me and the chief.
Okay. Why don't we start with Reed?
Well, I'll start with just questions for now, save remarks for later. Chief, VIP program, obviously, I can understand why you'd have concerns about putting them in a role like that. But more so, can you just talk about where that program is in terms of membership and where it used to, as we're looking at what we can do, I seem to recall that membership's really down in that volunteer program.
Yeah, membership has been down. As you know, many of our VIPs are a little bit up there in age. God bless her. We just celebrated Mary Whitmire's 100th birthday. She's been a VIP since 1983. So we do have a number of volunteers that fall into that category. I have to get you a number. I wasn't expecting that question, to be honest with you, but I can get you an up to date. We had a couple of people be interested and step up for the program recently, but not anywhere near the numbers that we saw prior to COVID. I think that particular volunteer program did take a hit. during COVID, and
Oh,
as
yeah.
I said, I mean, granted, we still are so thankful for the ones that we have. You saw the numbers, thousands of hours of their own time. But we have tried to use them, and the Vice Mayor and I have talked about that, where we have tried to use them in more of a capacity that would be similar to this has not worked out well, and to where the volunteers have wanted to step away, both at the boat ramps, where, you know, quite frankly, they were rude to our volunteers. And over the years, and I guess many, many years ago, they did try to look at them for maybe some kind of traffic control, and then the same thing, you know, the drivers not treating them with respect, you know, putting them in a dangerous situation, which is not what I want to do, and I don't think it's the best option.
Okay. And then I want to make sure I wrote this stat down correctly. Said only 8 schools in Volusia County have hand-directed traffic, and 4 of those are in Port Orange.
And that's something we'll have to, yes, that was so our traffic unit called around to the various jurisdictions,
Out of 67.
correct, and I don't want to give a specific number to
Yep.
but the number was up there, close to, from what I remember, almost 70 schools, and that was the response we got. 8 different schools in all of Volusia County, and we did it for 4 of them. And one of them wasn't actually at the school, it was at an intersection that was close to the school.
Okay. I think that's the only 2 questions I have right now.
Tracy?
So I understand the VIPs and the age and retirement, and I agree with you. The boat ramp was brutal. I wouldn't want to sit down there and listen to people down there. And what they do for the city is pretty remarkable for the thousands of hours that they give. My question is for the community, what's the difference on what a CSO is? So people understand that position.
So, quite frankly, their main responsibility is as I mentioned, traffic control, and to ensure that these areas that tend to become very congested are able to quickly alleviate that congestion, and when you say, you know, the quicker that they can get the school traffic under control and get the backup, you know, some of the stacking that we mentioned, and then even at that peak hour, right, those peak 20-30 minutes where everybody's arriving at the same time, that's what they're there for, is to get that roadway reopened, and that's the design of that program. And as I said, that's the design that's been in place for at least 10 to 15 years.
And I don't know
at
if
a
you read,
minimum.
they're civilian employees of the
Correct.
police department
I
who
felt-
we do train and provide a vehicle to,
Correct.
whereas the VIPs, we give them vehicles, they don't get to take them.
They don't take
on
them.
on assignment, sometimes they don't, but they're volunteers, unpaid.
And the CSOs are the same, and I should have mentioned that. That's correct. They are civilians. They are not sworn law enforcement. The training is much shorter, obviously, so we can get a CSO up and running in a fair amount of time. They also do. You'll see they're always in pickup trucks. Part of the reason for that is if they help to respond to a traffic homicide or some type of serious injury accident, or even just an accident that's tying up the roadways, they're able to run back to the station, utilize the pickup trucks to pick up cones, to assist the traffic unit if they need to get barricades, remove bicycles from the roadway. So they serve those functions. I'll tell you, part of the reason I looked at what they do, and it is in our policy, as I mentioned, so one of the prior chiefs, either Grimaldi or Monahan, had looked at how you could utilize them differently. I'll tell you, at my former agency, and granted we were much larger, I had over 30 CSOs, but they did not direct traffic unless there was at an accident scene or out in a roadway. Their primary function was to respond for certain types of calls for service, to handle accident reports, with the idea that then frees up the patrol officers to respond to emergency calls. So this situation is unique to me, but to answer your questions, the overwhelming majority of what they do, both in the morning and afternoons, is traffic control.
Okay. Because what my look is we're limited on staff as it is for sworn officers. But if we could elevate the CSO to take some of those positions at the schoolings and cross, it would be beneficial for you, if I'm gathering that right, to be able to do that job. So you're not taking away from law enforcement handling the other tasks at hand. I think
Potentially.
we live in a county of a lot of people moving here, a lot of retirees that are law enforcement that are retired. And I can't imagine that a few of them still don't want to serve in a smaller capacity of what they used to do. So it might be something as how can we target to be able to bring more CSOs into the department to help with the school issues.
And other things as well.
Yeah.
You got all your questions?
I
Both the
actually, to
chief-
follow up on that, so do you
Go
know
ahead.
how many CSOs we have currently in the department?
We only have the 3 that are out there directing traffic. We brought a 4th, as I mentioned, late spring, with the idea that they could handle maybe some of those nonviolent, no suspect involved reports.
Right.
Um,
And there's no vacancies.
there's no vacancies. Yeah, we added that one and filled it right away.
Thank you.
You good?
I'm good for now.
Because we're asking questions to both the chief and the city manager. Just making sure. Okay. Scott?
Chief, well, real quick, just to make a clarification, because I want to make sure we're all on the same sheet of music. So the history of the VIPs that the chief is referring to, I can speak to. Back in the 80s, in the early 90s, the VIPs would help out with some traffic control at the school zones. They also did that to some degree at the boat launch facility and other places around the city. And as the chief was trying to put it very politely, what happens is these are pure volunteers. And the concept of that program was people who wanted to volunteer that could help with a lot of administrative tasks and some task out in the community when they could help in non-law enforcement related positions. And they've been very, very effective. However, when it came to implementing them and putting them in traffic control type duties and functions, what they found was the same thing that a lot of our law enforcement officers experience is people don't like to be told what to do. They don't like the direction. They were constantly being berated and rude. And they came to the chief of police back in that day, which was Bob Ford, and they basically said, we like to volunteer for the city, but we need to be able to pick and choose what we're comfortable doing, and this isn't it, and we're not doing that anymore. And so the volunteers themselves said, you got to find another source for this, because we're not going to do that anymore. That evolved early into us taking what we used to refer to as our animal control officers and actually having them trained to meet state qualifications so that they could then start assisting with traffic control responsibilities, which would free up some of like the motor officers that could actually do traffic enforcement. And then over the time, what happened is the ACO, what we used to refer to as an animal control officer, ACO, evolved into a CSO position. And the idea, what we found there was there were a lot of tasks that would take our law enforcement officers off the street that were non-law enforcement task related. For example, somebody calls us and says, hey, I was walking the park and there's 2 bicycles laying in the pond. We don't need a police officer to leave their zone to go pick up bicycles. So we would have CSOs and they would go do that. Like the chief mentioned, if they had a bad crash or a crime scene and additional equipment would need to be brought to those scenes, the CSOs were equipped and set up to do that. And then as the evolution of an additional school and growth in the region of our county, with more traffic, the CSOs then became more and more utilized for traffic control in a lot of our areas. And so I just wanted to clarify that the CSOs do direct traffic in the schools currently, and that's kind of how that program evolved. Chief, you spoke on the review at Silver Sands, that there was a previous review which was requested to see if a county crossing guard could be established at that location. Am I correct that there was a review or was not a review?
I think there was a conversation whether that was even possible because it wasn't, and it wasn't Silver Sands. It was out west,
Okay.
coming out of Water's Edge
All right.
area. It wasn't near the school. It wasn't crossing the driveway at the school. It was literally in the area of the Water's Edge entryway, and I think it was where we were told it's not gonna, that we would not be getting a crossing
Okay, so
guard.
basically the feedback was that just unless they're crossing streets.
Correct. Generally, what you'll see, and this is from my experience, I'm not sure completely how the sheriff's office does it. Generally, you'll see them either at an intersection itself, or on a. And again, I'll go back to just just right here in our own city, at Spruce Creek Elementary. Right, you have the 5-lane roadway, you have a high speed coming in, so there's 2 crossing guards at that location to get them to cross from north and south as they're coming into the school, where you'll see both guards stop traffic in both directions. I personally have not seen crossing guards in a situation such as Sugar Mill, but again, that's just from my experience, prior agency, so I'm not sure how they deploy them here, but generally that's where you'll see them. And then, an intersection, say, if they had to do one at near Port Orange Elementary, where you're dealing with Dunlawton, and we know the type of vehicle traffic that we have on that state road, I wouldn't be surprised if you needed 4 crossing guards if you had to cross at a certain section, just to completely ensure that vehicles are going to stop.
And is the county crossing guard program still only being utilized for elementary schools?
That I'm not aware of. Okay, I know that's in past my experience.
Maybe in the next meeting, if you could just
I'll verify
give me
that.
confirmation.
Yeah.
What I would like to have confirmation on is that the case, number one, and number two, was there an actual committee review for Sugar Mill previously in this geographic area of Charles Street? That's what.
That I believe there was
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
It was submitted to the committee. We do have the data on that, and the committee did not approve putting a crossing guard there
Okay.
in 2023.
Okay. That's
and-
that's actually what I wanted to confirm, was that it was reviewed by the county committee and there was a denial.
Correct. And then my experience is, again, generally you don't have crossing guards at the middle schools and definitely not at the high schools, which does cause a problem because of the time difference between the start and end times of the schools. Because that was always a concern, even in South Florida, is to, my middle school, you left the school zone and my middle school student hasn't crossed the roadway yet. So, but I will verify that that's the case here as well.
Yeah, the other equations, like the later start times for high schools now, the fact that the sheriff, I think he said he's 25 crossing guards short now, can't hire. There are other difficulties. Of course, those are conversations Wayne and the chief are going to have in regards to. The hardest part here is that so much of what we've tried to provide is based on what's been asked for, what we've been told is needed, and things like that. And I think this council will agree that moving forward, our standard is not to provide the minimum of what's being asked for, but to set the standard instead. And I think the biggest challenge we have is we've seen when a lot of people in charge, us, school district, sheriff's department, city, county, state, when you have so many people in charge, nobody is. And we need to take charge of this. And I know that there are almost 70 school zones in this county. These are the 10 that we can have some influence over. Scott, did you have any more questions?
No, that's it for right now.
Any other questions? Okay, coming back. I want to get all the questions answered up here, and then we'll go to the audience. We'll get their comments, and then we'll come back then we will come back to us. Go ahead, Tracy.
Chief, dealing with the Argott-Stone Douglas policy, been told that one of the key elements to that is dealing with security, is that there's only 2 access points allowed coming and going at any school. So you get a drop-off for buses for elementary schools, and then a drop-off for parents' pickups and things of that nature. Am I correct on that one?
I'd have to refer back to the Stoneman Douglas report, but yes, those were some of the discussions as far as entry onto the school campus itself, and then there was the discussion of single points of entry into the actual school itself. So it was, you did have a separate access point for bus loops, but to the
Right.
school itself, as far as entry into the physical building, those were single point access points.
Okay. One of the things that you said, and I went out there yesterday and did a walk. Not an easy thing by any stretch of the imagination. And took a look at it. And one of the things you said was the environmental design to mitigate. sitting with Wayne and talking to him with it yesterday and having the discussion on it. I know that the city can only do X amount until we get to county property, and then it's up to the county to go from there. Where I'm seeing the crosswalk going in front of the exit. On the west side where that crosswalk is, the sidewalk goes into the school. So any child that has crossed the major intersections or anything with school guards is on that sidewalk. They would walk down to that sidewalk and enter the school right there without having to go across a crosswalk. Unfortunately, we have a senseless tragedy that the child has to go from the east side across the crosswalk when the incident happened. My question, I mean, it's, to me, being a simple person, looking at things simply, is looking at this crosswalk and going, why are we sending any kids across a crosswalk? When all we have to do is on the east side is put another 4-foot sidewalk to go down into the school where the gate is. So we have 2 sidewalks, one on the east side and one on the west side, so they never have to go across that crosswalk at all. Then they are now inside the school
Correct.
to go forward from there. Is my thinking wrong?
No, and that's one of the suggestions even our traffic sergeant has. And again, you know, we can make recommendations on what we think is the safest route possible. But you are correct, and now is an opportune time, right? Because we're talking about some of the changes that are going to occur with the right turn lane entering into the school.
Correct.
So while we're, you know, in that phase now, and granted, I realize we're down that road, but potentially that, yes, that mitigates anyone having to cross from east to west. It will have to have them cross through the parent loop, but that'll be farther into the campus to where potentially school personnel will be on hand, or the guardian, or the school security officer.
We would then have personnel to be able to take care of the child at that point. Where we're out front, we're trying to find people.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that it's not a budgetary thing. I'm saying it shouldn't have to be done to begin with. It's pouring a concrete sidewalk to mitigate it.
And that is one of the suggestions, obviously, we were going to bring up. We've mentioned it as well. Traffic units mentioned that. You know, in addition to some other things, you know, what's option 2, what's option 3, if that's not feasible. Because I will tell you this, you know, we think we have a solution like that, and then we don't think about everything that planning has to deal with, and when it comes to ADA requirements and distance and things that just aren't in my wheelhouse. You know, we look at
Correct.
something and go, hey, if you do this, this is going to work, without thinking of what the unintended consequences are, right? You know, if we make everybody go right, well, then that's going to cause an issue with these 2 crosswalks and potentially tie up traffic again. So it's all of those things, and having the people in the room that have the expertise. You know, I am by no means an expert in all of those things. And those are the things that we need the other people in the room to say, okay, that might work, except, and this is what also has to
This is where
happen.
the conversation is so important,
Right.
because those physical improvements to the school campus have to come from the school district. We don't own the schools, obviously, it's got to come from them. But our part is to suggest, know what's coming there, so that we can react and provide the service accordingly.
Correct.
So I don't want to be the error of talking about other entities.
Yeah, well,
But maybe the city pours the concrete footer up to them and go, we're prepared, now continue it.
And I will say, the existing design as it is going to push that crosswalk potentially farther back away from the roadway, which may allow for some other design features that we're not thinking of.
Yeah.
That's going to occur anyway, just the way the road's going to turn, and where that crosswalk will now be located will be farther away from the roadway. Does that give enough, you know, even more reaction time for parents, you know, that are pulling in and out of that lot? So those are also things that'll come out of the design feature and the planning, but we can still pitch that. Correct.
to shorten that acceleration lane, which it would do, because there's less time to accelerate because you'd be closing that gap there.
Right.
Because when you come around that curve, at that point, it's a straightaway. Anything you can do to shorten that, I don't know. There again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but
Right.
these are questions we all have to ask.
And I think, I just want to comment on, Tracy, that suggestion is actually something I went down and looked at myself, because I had heard, you know, the idea of, you know, you parallel the entryway and then you create a pedestrian bicyclist crosswalk on the school campus farther inside that gate area. And I definitely think that is warranted to really take a strong look at. But we need to keep in mind that you're still having children cross in front of the same exact cars. They're just doing it 25 or 30 or however far in, and that there's still an element there that has to be addressed. The other thing that when I saw that, I guess maybe my little bit of a background in traffic, is that as you got cars that are coming in and off of Charles Street, and they're making those turns into the school, it would need to be far enough onto the campus so that they could realize, okay, there's a teacher or a coach or an administrator that has stepped out in front of cars to stop cars to let kids cross. Because if not, you're going to have is cars turning in and immediately running into the back of each other. So all of that stuff definitely would need to be reviewed. But I like the idea and the design. There is some pretty good amount of distance and where the students would be going to get to the bike racks and
it's a long
actually
ways.
be on campus. I think you could push that in there a little farther. I would, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I like the idea a lot. I just think that it would need to be studied much farther into campus, which wouldn't be a big deal. More concrete, but if it saves another life, it's worth every dime. So no problem there at all. But I like the idea for sure.
So
There's
so
already a crosswalk there.
I was just getting ready to say, as somebody who drops off and picks up my son through that loop, right now there are several parking spaces and there is a crosswalk there.
And somebody does step out to man it when somebody comes to it.
Right, yeah,
Right.
and they do not like when parents try to walk across there without having someone looking on there. So I mean, the idea has merit, but they already have that crosswalk. God, probably 200 feet it feels like. Or at
And you
least
can add features to it.
Yeah, and you could add lights. You know, like there's a lot of things you could do in there once they're on that property.
And I've got to believe that right now they're more than willing to talk about a lot of things.
Yeah. I have another question.
Go ahead.
This is actually for Wayne. Wayne, so this school crossing evaluation committee that you mentioned, so talking about getting experts in the room, do we know who that's comprised of? Do we know how people get appointed to that, what their qualifications are, when do they meet? Like, what are the details of that?
It apparently goes back into the 80s at the county. Mike Springer and I spent a couple of days trying to research its history. It wasn't easy to find information on. We found people who manage it today, and they were very cooperative, immediately told us the next meeting's coming up in July. You're welcome to attend. We've even been told, feel free to come talk about this. So, but its history and how it came about, it appears to be an 80s era, when the sheriff was not a charter officer, but worked for the county, and there was a county traffic engineer, there's a citizen member, there's like law enforcement. I don't remember the list of them. We weren't able to find what, like our environmental advisory board. We can go on the website and look up, here's our committee. The county has a whole list of all the committees that they have on their website, and I couldn't find that on the website to look into. So I think just because of its history and how long ago it goes back, but it appears to be a series of people who have certain specific skills and also some residents or parents, so that you get a broader range of information. But I do not know specifically. We were not able to find that through a pretty good amount of research.
Okay. But then we know they meet again in July.
We do, and we will be there, and that's how we'll get the answers to the questions of their history and role. And like I said, even if the role isn't that, I think we at least say, do you want to think about a different role? Should we do that? Whoever created them may want to broaden their scope or their role given these situations. I mean, I don't think anything's off the table trying to figure out a solution here. And even if they won't or cannot, we can still at least ask people who've been spending 40 years providing advice on safety, any ideas for us to do better?
Solutions plural.
Yeah.
One thing that, Wayne, we talked about is this process, and it'll continue to be ongoing, I want to make sure that it is on the agenda for a council meeting, our first council meeting in August, to have another discussion after you've had those discussions with the district, school district, after you've had those discussions with the crossing guard. I want to hear where we're at for our part, and certainly if there are things that need action from us in the meantime, we can take care of that. But I also want people from the public to be able to come here before us and be able to hear what we've done since then and what we've done in conjunction with others. And if we have information from based on what others are planning to do, we can share that as well, so that everybody's not getting it in bits and pieces from everybody. But certainly the more the better, even if it's not just ours. Okay. Any other questions of the chief or the city manager? Let's go to the public. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Anybody who wants to speak, you've got 3 minutes. When you come up, just identify yourself, where you live. We're not going to interact with you. We're going to listen. This way that nobody says I didn't get my time or anything like that. After we're going to be taking notes. We're going to be going through all of that. But we're not done discussing this. We're going to be come back to us and be able to react and hopefully get you guys some answers, because I know that we've asked a lot of questions up here. I hope we've got some of the answers for you, but we want to hear from you what other questions you have. It's got a lot of arms and legs to it. It's a very fluid situation. So as of right now, anybody care to speak to the item?
Yes.
Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Mark Dickinson. Address is exempt for former law enforcement who live on Herbert Street. There's a lot of moms in here that are probably going to be upset about this. One of them actually witnessed me almost getting hit by a car a day and a half after, 2 days after, at that same intersection. Right before that, Officer Garay was on his phone, sitting on his motorcycle, texting or doing something on his phone. I simply asked him just to put his lights on and turn those on to be more visible. I think that's what a lot of these parents wanted from all of the times that they've emailed you, and clearly said that we just want someone down there to be more visible. He was defiant in it. Same thing when they're down at Silver Sands. Why don't you turn your lights on to have some preemptive stoppage of these people coming in the school zone to slow them down? You guys don't get 50% of the tickets anymore, and it's just not the way. Protect the kids, keep them there, turn their lights on. But Officer Gray just wouldn't do that. And when I almost got hit, someone took a photo of it. He didn't even bother to say anything, didn't stop. The lady was over the stop bar. If you're not going to be down there, Mayor, if you can, just guide the chief to have them always have their lights on, because it's no longer this let's ticket them and get them anymore. Please. Okay?
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Who's next?
I'm Aaron Bornhoft. I live in the city of Port Orange. I just have a few things I want to read, so try not to get emotional. The entry at our school needs a traffic cop. We used to have one. We were told we got it taken away when parents would go and park on the right side where you guys are saying there's a crosswalk. Well, parents would park there, walk their kids across, effectively stop traffic 2 additional times, and then back up into that traffic and stop it again. So that's why we were told the traffic cop got taken away, because the school would not remove those parking spots, but they didn't have the room for additional parking. Every car enters at that crossing. It is not protected, along with it being one of the busiest student crossings. They're also building a new community right behind our school, and we believe that will add additional student crossings. I ask that you as city leaders work with the county and schools to get it implemented and quickly. We ask that the crossing be protected. It was even reviewed by the Sheriff's Crossing Guard Committee and deemed not necessary to have a guard there. I ask that we urgently find a solution for all elementary schools prior to the start of next school year and have a plan of action implemented and in place. I find it scary when a Port Orange police officer informed me that the entrance at Two Horizon is even worse than ours and also unguarded. We have members of our police force, parents that see it every day, and we have safety measurements in place for what seems like less hazardous areas, but yet these ones that seem most hazardous continue to go unprotected. I would also like city planning to evaluate all sidewalks in the neighborhood surrounding Sugar Mill. You guys showed sidewalks that were improved, and they're quite a bit of distance from the school. There are several right by the school. If you go down Old Sugar Mill Road, it's intermittent. There's a sidewalk, then there's not. And then you get to Sugar Mill Gardens, there's no sidewalk. It's a blind corner. Kids are crossing that. It's dangerous. Please reevaluate where CSOs are located. As stated by the police chief, they are prioritized to normally higher traffic areas. However, like I just said, I feel like our infrastructure around the school is significantly less than those other higher traffic areas, which makes it more dangerous. I also understand that the city is not in control of every aspect of the safety standards we want to implement, and as you guys have touched on as already. But I mean, some is county crossing guards, some is on school grounds, some is with city police, but you guys communicate and plan with all other parties, and like you said, you going to have those meetings. I just ask that we control and ask that everyone gets on the same page urgently and action is taken to prevent additional preventable tragedies.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Hi. I'm Stephanie Cathy. I live in South Daytona on the Port Orange line. I'm the parent of a child at Sugar Mill Elementary as well as the PTA president. I'm not here to place blame or to point fingers. I'm here to ask you all for help. When my son was hit by a car outside of Sugar Mill less than 2 years ago, and I'm sure you're all tired of hearing about it, I've been on a fierce mission to increase safety outside of the school. I do not believe this falls on any one agency. I think collectively we've failed. The city, the county, sheriff's department, Port Orange Police, school board, and yes, parents have all failed. Trust me when I say that I see the aggression that comes out of some parents at the parent pickup drop-off, which is one of the main reasons I push for consistent police presence at the school, not only for speeding, but most especially in terms of traffic control. I'm not telling any of you how to do your job. I don't know how to do your job. I am confident that if all of these agencies come together and sit in a room and open-mindedly discuss the issues, we can figure out solutions. If we are better off tomorrow than we are today or yesterday, that's a step in the right direction. I know there may not ever be a permanent solution. Accidents happen, people get distracted. We now see tragedies do happen, but it is my heartfelt belief that this one could have been avoided if the constant attempts made by myself to bring attention to the kids biking and walking to school were taken seriously. Guys, I got so lucky. It was a matter of seconds before my kid was this kid. Seconds. And I begged all of you for help. I have printed out 500 pages of emails with many of you attached, him attached as well, asking for help, and it fell on deaf ears. I lost my place because I just got emotional. When I pushed the city to request crossing guard at the school, the crossing guard committee conducted an investigation or survey to see if we qualified for a crossing guard in early 2023, and it was decided that by the committee it was not necessary. That it was a police enforcement issue and a parent issue, again with pointing fingers. When Lennon was hit, I was told it was school property, then city, but because it was Volusia County Schools, I needed to talk to the sheriff. For a long time, no one listened to me. There was never any real effort for a solution. I keep getting pushed off. I'm asking the city to put pressure on the chief of police, who, by the way, based on your own statement, seems to think that a 5-year-old riding his bike to school with his dad, who stopped by the crosswalk and made sure everyone was not moving, looked left and right, before slowly entering the crosswalk before a girl hit her gas, throwing him into oncoming traffic, that it was potentially his fault. He was partially to blame, but I'm here to say no, he's not. He's not to blame. He was 5. Whew. Stop blaming my son. And it didn't take a tragedy like this to get you guys to step up. I've been asking for help for 2 years. This is unacceptable. I'm trying not to get emotional. I'm asking you guys to tell the chief of police for no tolerance. I remember back in the day when it was welcome to Port Orange, here's your traffic ticket. We don't have that anymore. It used to be a big joke, but now it seems that things are just getting pushed aside. I'm going to ask the school that if they find parents driving hazardously in the schools, they'll kick them out. I'm going to ask the county to incentivize crossing guards. I have ideas. I've been thinking about this for years. A sidewalk thing was also an idea that I had. I'm running out of time. I'm just asking if you all to listen. I'm tired of begging. This kid didn't have to die, and it was preventable. Thank you.
Hey, Stephanie. Stephanie, do me a favor. Turn around. I want everybody to see your shirt.
Justice for Shalon.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?
Hi, my name's Sherry Peterson. I live in Port Orange. I won't take too much time. They basically have said everything that I'm thinking. I just want to make sure that while we're having these discussions, these conversations in the room, that we're thinking that we're restoring the confidence in these children, because they don't have confidence in the adults in the room right now. None of them, my 2 included. So that should be our most important step. 2, I want to make sure that the visibility of the information that's being discussed and knowed and yayed and everything that you guys are coming up with ideas, which I appreciate the fact that everybody's coming to the room. I want that information disseminated. The community is here to help. I'm here to help. I want to be here to help. This should never have happened. So how can we all work together to come up with the answer, the solution, as opposed to, this is not my responsibility, this is so-and-so's responsibility. They'll tell you what they can do, what they can't do. They'll tell you what you are allowed to do as a volunteer, as a person, as a parent in the front of the school. I think it's important that everybody comes together, puts that information out there, and tells us what we're allowed to do, what we can't do. And that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Another good shirt.
Everybody else has pretty much said what I already have to say, but my name is Audrey Brooks. I live in Port Orange. My daughter is a 4th grader at Sugar Mill Elementary, and she happened to that Friday walk by and see, before first responders even got there, a little girl, and she knew, she was able to identify her by her pink backpack. So I want that image to sit with everybody who has the authority to make decisions, because I can't take that away from my 10-year-old. And she should have never had to see that. It was so preventable. I have been on Stephanie's side since her son got hit almost 2 years ago, actively trying to email anybody that would listen. I emailed in April 13th of 2023, I spoke to Gregory Gaver. I was told he was a traffic supervisor. I pretty much got the brush off on that as well. It was very disappointed. It basically got nowhere. I was told we have 5 motor officers total, and on Mondays and Fridays we only have 3. I don't know the solution either. Again, that's y'all's job, everyone's job, county's job, but something needs to be done before August again. I need to know that my child is not going to walk by and see what she saw. I can't take that back now, but we can't go backwards. We can go forward, and we need to move forward at a quicker pace. And meetings are in 2 weeks. Meetings are in 4 weeks. We need to find a solution so that out of the 3 different ways that children get inside Sugar Mill Elementary, if there's only 2 crossing guards allowed, one needs to be in the front of the school where everybody is entering the school. Our kids need to get to school safely, and I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with me that there is nothing more important than our children's safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Hi, I'm Erin Warwick. My daughter goes to Sugar Mill, or she did, from kindergarten to 5th. She just graduated. Fortunately, she had that lucky thing these days. I just want to say, first off, that I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry we dropped the ball. I'm good friends with Stephanie, and I didn't advocate hard enough when Lennon got hit. I sat out front on my bicycle with Mike and tried to stop people from parking there, and that wasn't good enough. But I stopped after that. I didn't advocate hard enough, and she did. And she still got the same response. It was just shirking of blame from City Council to the Port Orange Police to Volusia County School Boards. I just want to ask that we make sure, starting Sugar Mill's next school year, even though my daughter's not going to go there, that there will be an officer there directing traffic every day. Because when my daughter started going there was an officer that directed traffic, and it was a lot better than it is now. And now we have Lennon's accident, and now poor Shalon. And everyone knows that everyone knew this would happen because Stephanie stated it. I think every single parent that went there every day was on edge. So I just want to say, please make sure that there is a police officer there directing traffic next school year. And can we all say we're sorry for what happened instead of just passing off the blame? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? I'm going to give it a second in case somebody's on the fence. Yep.
My name is Ray Hill. I am a parent of 2 children at Sugar Mill Elementary. When everything happened on the 24th, I started a petition at change.org, and the petition is asking for an officer to be present at that entranceway. Amongst other things like signs, a raised crosswalk, things to help prevent this. I did want to point out that I did reach out to the mayor back in October of 2023. It wasn't even 3-4 months after my kids started going there that I started to notice how dangerous it was. We are within walking distance, and I will not let my kids walk. I will not let them ride their bikes, because I could see it from the very beginning of the school year that it was just going to be too dangerous, and that there's not enough safety precautions put in place for these kids to get there safely. And I also, with Stephanie, have tried to voice this before this ever happened, and like she said, it fell on deaf ears, and now this has occurred. So we just want the city of Port Orange to hear our pleas, because now this has happened and it could have been prevented. And our petition, we were trying to go for 2,500. We are almost at 3,000 signatures, and I can have that to you guys if you want it or anything of the sorts, but that was all we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray.
Who else? Give everybody one more chance. Did we get everybody? Okay. Back to council. Comments and questions based on what we've heard tonight from everyone. Reed, why don't you start?
Well, it's a very interesting position I'm in because I sit on both sides of this table. Like I said, my son's a first grader. He's going to second grade. And me and my wife both have driven through there a lot. And, you know, I share Stephanie's feelings that she just was speaking about. What frustrates me the most, both as a parent and as a sitting council member, is this intergovernment communication breakdown. When she reached out to me about Lennon getting hit, you know, it was one of these things where I thought it was taken care of. I thought someone else was going to do something. And the second time when she came back to me, we did do something. We reached out, and Dawn, your wife, Anita, helped to move that along. But the big thing for me that from tonight that is of the most concern, both, like I said, as a parent and as someone who is a decision maker on this dais, is how do we figure out to make sure all the information is on the table and that all the voices are being heard and that we're getting information from experts to make good decisions. You know, I would love to know more about why this school crossing evaluation committee, why did they turn down that intersection to have a crossing guard? You know, I'm left with more questions than answers, and unfortunately, right now, not many of them are for our staff. You know, I've already asked my questions of our staff, and I know that we're going to take initiative on this to see what can be done. I'm trying to make sure this is. I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this exactly, but as a kid, I was a big Dale Earnhardt fan. Follow me for a second here, but when he passed away in turn 4, NASCAR changed everything. All of a sudden, there was no money that was too much to spend. There was no idea too silly. It was, let's make the walls softer. Let's put these devices on drivers. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's do this. I would urge everybody to make sure that we exhaust all of our thoughts, all of our ideas, all of our efforts, and get all the people in the room at the same time so that we can take effective action going forward.
Tracy?
So it's I have to agree with Councilman Foley. The senselessness of how we have so many hands trying to take care of our children, and something gets unfortunately slipped through and it happens to a child. It just should never happen. I live in District 2, which is right down the street from Horizons, and I had the pleasure of taking both of my kids early morning, because my wife works night and early morning, to elementary school. They're now 21 and 19. So it's been a while since I've had to go down there to the elementaries and watch that process. But it hasn't changed, and I know that. we try to protect as much as we can, but at the same time, it's not just one single thought that can fix this problem. I agree with Reed that in this process, we need to have everything collectively together fast. One of the challenges that we have at hand is speed here to try to get this process taken care of to protect our children. School starts back in August. Now, if you know anything in government, and you've watched government, and the year that I've been in government, that process is hard. We need y'all's opinions and emails sent to the powers to be to speed this process up. I understand. Saying that, how we go forward with this is, unfortunately, it is county. We need the county to come to the city, or vice versa, us going to them to sit down for us to try to find the best solutions. But it might not just be one solution. This is going to be multiple pieces to be able to take care of and protect our children. Saying that, the environmental side of what we talked about with sidewalks, that's one piece of it. I know for a fact that with my youngest growing up, that even if there was a sidewalk for him to take to protect himself, he's a standard boy, he's going to go across the crosswalk because he just going to infuriate Dad. So we still need, even though we have those sidewalks going into the school to protect them, we're still going to need either a CSO or a school crossing guard or somebody to stop the one child. So we're not having the one child to pay the price of what we're talking about today. So thank you for coming out and not, well, let me change that. Thank you for coming out and allowing us to hear the concerns that we already know, but hear the concerns so we can go forward to try to get a fix or the best way we can with multiple solutions for this. And I can't stress it enough that there was a lot of anguish that day with me and having to go out there after hours and you know, and being out there. It is not taken lightly. No life should be taken lightly. And hopefully that we can, with council and the city manager and staff, we can come to a solution that is quick and rapid with the county to be able to handle this. Done.
Scott, one thing that you have is a unique viewpoint as retired law enforcement, and having had your wife work there and your kids go there as well, you've seen it, what it was, you've seen things grow around there, and I know you've probably got quite a bit to share, and I know that you've done a lot of that behind the scenes as well, and I appreciate that.
So I think as we try, I think the end goal here is make it better, make it safer, right? Do something, do anything, do something, but you got to start, you got to move forward, right? So I feel very confident that everybody's on that page. As we do that, I think it's really important that we always remember historically, how did something get to where it's at today, right? So I like the mayor's talking about, I have had a unique experience here, much like the assistant police chief who's in the back of the room. We've been in the city for quite some time, but in 1989 I started working for the police department and worked for the police department for over 20 years. The entire time I was there was always a police officer directing traffic here at the school. Why was there a police officer directing traffic here at the school? Well, it wasn't because of the student crossing aspect. The issue with the school was that the parent drop-off loop was so congested and so tiny that it created a very unique and really bad traffic congestion issue out on Charles Street. And then you'd have people going around cars that are waiting in line and doing all kinds. I've seen it all. It's crazy. I've seen it. In addition to that, you had the parent parking lot, which the buses went into, and you had the design of the two entry exit ways very close together. The parents wouldn't let the buses out of the parking lot. So conceptually, how that all ended up occurring, which actually even started before 1989 because it was already in effect when I got there, was that there would be an officer there to control traffic to keep Charles Street moving and allow buses to get in and out of this area. So that's kind of how that started, and then it was that way all the way up until I retired from the police department in 2011. One of the things that was constantly advocated by the police department to the school and the school district was you gotta fix the parent loop. You have this huge field, and as I'm speaking, I don't mean to not address you guys, but I know we got a lot of parents here that know this like the back of their hand. You have this massive field behind the school. And the idea was always, if you could just extend the parent loop, go all the way back into that field where they have to turn around, we can get the cars off of Charles Street, keep the traffic moving, and inherently make the entire area safer. Then in addition to that, years later, they closed the teacher entry exit, which I know is where Stephanie's son had the issue there. And where I'm going with that is, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but sometimes when you do one thing, it creates the next thing, right? So they closed that all seemed to help. The parent loop got extended, actually twice. It's now almost 3 times, I think, what the initial linear foot, I'm kind of looking at it here on Google Earth, but that's roughly about what it is. And that allowed cars to get on and off Charles Street and have this smoother transition without blocking Charles Street. And then, of course, you didn't have the bus issue because now I believe the buses go in and out off the McDonald area. So historically, that's how that all started. One of the things that that has really frustrated me about all of the accidents that we seem to have involving students going to or from school, not all, but a lot, all over the city, is how many parents and family members are responsible for the accidents. I get people who say, well, we need more signs that say school zone. There is a school there. You don't need a sign to tell somebody there's a school zone. There's a school, it's right there. But the signs already exist, and so I get very frustrated because the markings are there, the school exists, everybody knows it's a school zone, there's kids everywhere, and yet we've got people that are going to and from the school that are the biggest contributor to the problem. And so, as we move forward and we look at what are the low-hanging fruits, what can we do and what can we fix right now? One of the things I'm going to advocate for is I'd like to see the schools take a really good effort when they identify, like I've heard the rumors like a lot of people have. I don't know. I haven't seen an investigation. I want to be clear on that. But I've heard the rumors like everybody else that this particular person that was involved in this, that there was a constant observation of a less than appropriate driving skill on the campus itself. I don't know if that to be true or not. I just don't know. But that being the case, if that were the case, or if we do have parents or faculty members or anybody for that matter that's going on and off these school premises and they are not following and obeying the rules, the schools have the authority to remove them from the property and ban them from the property. They are not entitled to go onto the property. They can trespass, have them trespass warned. There's all kinds of things they could do. So we need to be advocating for that so that if the school staff, parents, whoever, PTA, if they're identifying that, hey, we got parents here, I will tell you guys, we've made multiple, at least 2 that I know of, DUI arrests in that student drop-off parking lot in the last 35 years. Twice. I know for a fact. So things are going to happen on campus. We need to be able to help. We need to get the staff to help us identify these folks, help take some action, remove these people out of the equation. If they can't follow the rules, that's something that we can do. We have to also implore the parents. There's going to take time to go through this process to drop your child off and pick your child up. Everybody's in a big damn hurry, right? Let's be honest. Everybody is in a hurry. This is not a place you can be in a hurry. You gotta slow down. You gotta be aware of what's going on. You gotta pay attention. So we need to find a way, maybe through our PTA program, school administration, put a bigger emphasis in educating the parents. Listen, start carpooling. One of the frustrating things in all of our school zones, for all of our law enforcement folks, we all see it. One car, one child, one car, one child, one car, one child. Nobody seems to want to carpool. It's almost like they don't know their friends. Well, carpooling will collectively reduce the volume of traffic. It will make things, hang on, let me finish. Collectively, not everybody, okay, not everybody, but a lot of people don't.
No, not most. No.
Right, a lot of people don't carpool. So, but if we can help reduce, traffic, then collectively we make things inherently safer, right? So safer for the kids, safer for everybody that's involved in this thing. So we need to do that as well. Our part is there's a lot of phases to this. So our part is we need to have an expectation in our city that enforcement is going to be strict. I can't write tickets anymore, but that would be my expectation. If somebody is committing a moving violation that is putting our kids at risk, anybody else at risk in these areas, my expectation is strict traffic enforcement. They get tickets. They don't get warnings when you got all these lights and flashing this and that stuff like that. So to do that, I've got to have officers on the eye, but our department has to have officers that are available to do that. I really like the idea Tracy and I were talking about earlier. I think if we can figure out how to improve the crosswalk in and of itself, improve and reduce the traffic congestion, and I mean, the best case scenario, and I've got it written down here, right here. Better on campus in the drop-off loop with the school staff, county crossing guards at the crosswalks, and city police officers doing the traffic enforcement, right? That's what we want. That's in a nutshell what would work the best for us to do that. In order to do that, we have to be able to have police officers that geographically can work this whole area. Because like we found out with, in Stephanie's situation, if it's okay if I call you that, I hope. We found out in that situation that delineators did get put up that prohibit the parking over the sidewalk and the crosswalk, right? But prohibit the parking, and what do we see now? Where do they go park? They go farther down, right? They're recreating another problem in a different location. My point to that is simply that whatever we decide to do collectively with all of the organizations and agencies, and this is where the frustration comes in the time. So I appreciate your comment earlier, right? Get on it, get something done, we gotta go. But we do also, as we do that, we really wanna make sure, are we creating another problem? And if so, let's anticipate where that might be. Let's see where that might be, because what's gonna happen is parents are gonna still wanna go through that drop-off loop, right? They're gonna go down and park on, well, we're already having the issue. They're going down now and parking on 5th Street. They're going down and parking on 4th Street. They're gonna not wanna do the process we all want them to do safely. And so that's all I'm suggesting. We have a huge problem with it out on, for Spruce Creek High School. Those parents, the kids don't wanna ride the bus. They don't wanna walk. They don't wanna ride a bike for whatever reason. And they get dropped off in all kinds of areas around the high school. And they create problems in those areas. So we have neighborhoods over there where every day, dozens and dozens and dozens of cars are in an area blocking driveways, creating site obstructions and all kinds of traffic conditions simply because they don't want to follow those rules. So I want to say, first of all, for everybody that came in tonight and stood up here and spoke, I know that's not easy, and I truly appreciate that. And everything that was said tonight resonates with us. And I know that I have, as I'm sure collectively the rest of the council has, given the direction to our city manager to get with whatever all these agencies are involved and come up with a plan and do something to make it safer. And so, I've got a whole sheet of ideas. Most of you already spoke about them. Some of them have already been talked about. But there's a lot of roles here where collectively I think we can make a difference, and we can make it safer and better than it was yesterday going forward. So that's all I got.
Wayne, one of the things that I asked about was time of day as well, because we got 10 school zones, 6 elementaries, supposed to be opening the gate, and if they're not opening the gate consistently at the same time, then how we staff those school zones also is affected. You know, certainly I think time of day is an equation here, but if you're opening a gate early or opening a gate late, one of the things I'd like to make sure we incorporate with our conversations with the district is that whatever their policy is that it's being implemented consistently so that we can react at all 6 elementary schools and know what to expect so we can provide the proper protection accordingly. That's certainly a factor. I mentioned earlier, when you get so many people in charge, it's like, oh, we just don't have nobody in charge. Well, I need us to take charge. I know that we are not responsible for all the 67 school campuses or whatever that number is, but we certainly got 10 of them. And I am sorry this happened. I don't know all the answers. I'm certainly not going to speculate on an investigation that is currently underway. I know some of the facts. I don't know them all yet. But I do know this, is that Wayne, you and the chief, this council is certainly charging you to react accordingly, and we're not waiting for the information there to know what was needed to prevent that. We've got enough information right now and you provided a great analysis earlier on the different points of emphasis that need to be, that we can go and work on a plan of action right now with our other government partners. That's what you're charged with. I do expect you guys will be prepared with a full report to us in the first meeting of August so that the public can hear it and what it is that we're going to do. And with that, I appreciate everybody.
Maybe I have one last quick thing.
You have one last quick thing?
Yeah, I had it written down here, and I just wanted to, I want to put it out there that today the sheriff's office put on social media and they put out an announcement that they are taking applications and they are looking to fill the school crossing guard vacancies. I think the mayor said 25. I had heard it was 19, but I would just ask that anybody, this is a great way to serve a community, by the way. Anybody that has the time and the ability to do that, please give that some consideration. It is a great program. Those crossing guards are needed to help bring solutions. And I would just ask everybody to please go onto the sheriff's office webpage or on their social media pages, find that and share that. And if you know people that have the time, have the ability, let's all promote that together and try to help fill the vacancies. Because when we can fill vacancies and you have more resources, we can employ those things to do better. So.
Okay. With that, you can I'm about to recess and I'll come to you. We're going to recess for 15 minutes and then we will rejoin the meeting at that point. How you doing, sir? And we are back. Item 5, public comments on consent agenda. There being none. Item 6, agenda approval. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda for the evening?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Agenda for the evening is approved, 4-0.
I like that.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 7 through 12.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion, proper second, to approve items 7 through 12 on consent. Call the roll.
Councilman Foley,
Yes.
Councilman Grubbs,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silver,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, consent agenda is approved. Public participation, do I have any cards? Okay. Jordan Snipes.
Good evening, all. I'm Jordan Snipes. As you guys know me, I'm the president and founder of Tomorrow Needs You. We have a veteran and first responder nonprofit. Just wanted to remind everyone about some upcoming events. I know last time I had said that we had 6 spots for the conference in Miami for a mental health symposium. Actually, one of the neighboring cities took 2 of those spots, so those are going down. And just want to say a little bit what that was. That is a program. It's a mental health symposium to be able to help and do peer support and everything like that for mental health, PTSD, and everything. So we still have 4 additional spots that are available to the city. And then we have this weekend coming up. We have a community dinner at the Port Orange Eagles from 5 to 7:30, June 8th. And then we have our 22-mile walk, which is our big event each year. It's coming up in September. And that's going to be hosted and started and finished in the city of Port Orange. So that's all.
Jordan, keep talking about it. Appreciate you, ma'am. Kelly Moore. More of Kelly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Kelly Moore. I am here representing the Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce. Just want to say on behalf of the board of directors, including myself, I just wanted to thank you for your continued support. I'm so sorry for the events that have transpired recently with that young student. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families. Just want to note a couple of upcoming events that I wanted to share because they are open to the public, so we encourage the residents to attend, business owners or not. This coming Friday, we have on June 7th from 8 to 9 a.m. is our monthly morning mix and mingle at the Port Orange Advent Campus on 5821 South Williamson Boulevard. We hope to see you there, and Mayor Burnett, we see you at a lot of the events, so we appreciate that. Our last Thursday of the month, we have our Coffee and Connections at Copperline in the Port Orange Pavilion. It's a very well-attended event. We were at over 40 attendees last month, which is our biggest attendance. And it is open to the public, whether you're a chamber member or not, as with all the events. And then from tomorrow, one of our sister cities, Daytona Beach Shores, we're highlighting members that own businesses in the city of Daytona Beach Shores. So there's going to be a member appreciation from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Max Beach Resort on 1901 South Atlantic Ave in Daytona Beach Shores. So thanks for allowing me some time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Robert Reinhagen. Come on up, Robert.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North. Chapter 9 of your Land Development Code, Section 4, Wetlands Mitigation Criteria. And it's paragraph D says mitigation should take place on site or in close proximity thereto, or in areas which shall be designated by the city as suitable for off-site mitigation. And I would like to recommend that you consider making that much more restrictive, and that you have off-site mitigation must be within the city, or else money's deposited into a mitigation fund. And we still have many flood-prone properties here in the city that we could buy, the city could buy, and do some creative work with to prevent flooding. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And Mark Dickinson. I do not see him. Tracy, that was all of them? Thank you. Council comments, why don't we start with Scott tonight?
I've got nothing else. We'll move on.
All right. Tracy, anything else for the evening?
One thing that I would like to bring up is council had a fire department rescue scenario over the weekend. Hate to say they bring all the toys out and all the big guns, but Joe and his staff did a phenomenal job showing us what they're made of. But what I'd like to do coming out of that and seeing what was done is get Wayne, if we can look at, if council agrees with this, is possibly next February during cooler months, having that for a public venue and letting the public come out and not exactly what we did, but to be able to see
An
everything.
open house with the training
You
facility.
don't, you don't want to let the general public rappel down the third floor,
You know,
or sixth floor.
falling off the building. You know, it was exciting. But I think it would be great if we could get fire and police together out at the center and be able to have a Citizens Day demo for what these guys do for the community.
That'd be a heck of an idea. Reed, what you got tonight?
First and foremost, I want to say thank you, actually, to FDOT. If you noticed, they announced, looks like July, they're going to be putting up a red light on the corner of Nova and Miles Drive, which has been a long conversation. A lot of people have been wanting, and I attended meetings on that. I advocated for that, and I know a lot of residents are happy that that's finally coming to be. So I want to say make sure I acknowledge that. Looks like installation will be in July, so I'm not sure. I don't think that'll result in any lane closures, but just be aware of it. And then also I wanted to mention the fire demo. That was really cool to see. Thank you, Chief Wolfing, and all of your staff for showing us around and giving us the VIP treatment. It was really fun. Appreciate, especially letting me bring the family so they could see it as well. I do think it's awesome. I think it would be cool for residents to have an opportunity to view it somehow if we could find out a sensible logistic way to do that in a safe way. and actually, on that note, and on what we were talking about earlier, I want to make sure that I say thank you to all of our first responders that work for the city. I was in New Jersey with some friends, and I was talking to a couple of law enforcement officers up there, and they were telling stories I usually don't get to hear. And it made me just sit back and pause and remember that there are a lot of things that they see and a lot of things they do that none of us would want to. And, I was thinking about this. Wayne has shared a statistic with me that in the last month or so, we've had 3 different firefighters in the state of Florida take their own lives. And so, for some reason, I just felt very compelled tonight to let our first responders know, police, fire, everyone, that you are appreciated, very much so. The job you do is not easy. It's not something a lot of people would want to sign up for, and there's a lot more. It reminds me actually talking to my father about his time in Vietnam. There's a lot of things that he doesn't discuss and that he lives with. And so I just want to make sure that our people know we appreciate you. I want that to be said over and over tonight for some reason. I just have this deep feeling that they need to hear it more often. So that's all.
Tracy, you had one more thing to add?
Yeah, Chief, I'm going to butcher this name, so help me with this. And the police department is very proud to announce that we have a new sergeant, Douglas Chimita. Thank you, because I'm reading it and I know I'm going to mess that up. Promoted to sergeant. He's been with the department for quite a while, field training officer, and Southeast Volusia Regional SWAT team also. So as we go forward, as he was getting promoted, we also took in 5 new sworn, not in school, sworn law enforcement this past weeks too. So the department's growing, and good job. Thank you, sir.
It was great to see that event. It was great to see the sergeant seem a little nervous, even though that he was in figuring his way around a room that he'd been in about 100 times. But it was good to see. We appreciate that. The only thing I wanted to add is this Thursday is June 6th. You know, we remember these things because they're a magic number because it's 80 years. But 80 years ago this Thursday is the anniversary of D-Day. My grandfather landed at D-Day. He landed on the beaches of Normandy. And he saw a lot of things, and we lost a lot of lives that day. He also fought the Battle of the Bulge, two of the biggest battles of World War II. And he came home. And many did not. I want to remember all of them because many of those that did came back changed people. But they did that was in service of a country and in service of a world that needed it at the time. And I will be issuing a proclamation in their honor on this Thursday for D-Day, the 80th anniversary on D-Day. So when you see notices on Facebook and social media, do me a favor, just don't hit like, hit love, and then share it. Make sure everybody in your circle sees it. Just take the extra second. I'd appreciate that. I think everybody who served will as well. On Memorial Day, we had 2 centenarians with us that served in World War II. Not 1, but 2. Amazing. Just amazing, that generation. And just keep them in mind on this Thursday. With that, the public hearing portion of the meeting is now open. Second reading of ordinance number 2024-08. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, approving the 7th Amendment to the Clark Professional Center and Wedding Chapel Plan, Commercial Development Master Agreement, and Conceptual Development Plan, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2024-08.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item's open on the floor for discussion. We got second reading. Any comments, questions, council? There being none, would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us. Council, final comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilman Foley?
Yes.
Councilman Russ?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Siltman?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes. 5-0, and I know I skipped the Golf Advisory Board report. I'll come back to that after the public hearing. We have resolution number 24-15, and I apologize for that. Resolution 2415 is a resolution of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, providing and authorizing the reissuance, execution, and delivery of the City of the Private College Facility Revenue Bonds, Palmer College, a chiropractic project, Series 2019B, in aggregate principal amount not to exceed $14,860,000. The execution and delivery an amended and restated indenture of trust and amended and restated loan agreement to provide with the reissuance of said bonds, providing that said reissuance shall not constitute a debt, a liability or obligation to the city, but shall instead be payable solely from the revenues herein provided, and providing for the authorizing of the execution and delivery of the related bond documents, providing for certain other details in connection therewith, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve resolution number 24-15.
Second.
We have a motion, proper seconds. The item is on the floor for discussion. Council, any comments or questions? There being none, anyone here care to speak to the item? Anybody but Robert? Come on up, Robert.
Sorry. Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. To me, using the city's tax-free status as a subsidy based simply on the fact that they rent land owned by the city, I would consider such a subsidy to be discriminatory if it's not offered to every business in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
We
Care to come
we
up,
have a
Doug
new
Sadler?
bond counsel, so we would like, Shannon was going to introduce him and let him talk.
Yeah, sorry, let me introduce myself. I'm Tim Bramwell. I'm a partner with Ackerman in Jacksonville. We're your bond counsel. I guess your bond counsel up until the end of March was Peter Dame and had been for 40 some odd years. He retired at the end of March, and I joined him at Ackerman back in 2021, and I've taken over the public finance practice from him. Just to address the comments that, you know, this kind of subsidy is actually a subsidy by the federal government. It deals with the tax exemption of interest, or the exemption of the interest on the bonds from federal income tax. And, you know, this type of financing is available to all 501c3s within the city upon application, ultimately. This bond was issued back in 2019 to refinance the facilities here in Port Orange as well as in Davenport, Iowa. What they're doing here now is not, it's a deemed reissuance for tax purposes, but really they are, you know, moving from one lender to another lender within the confines of the existing bond documents as this financing was structured for. And so nothing really new here is being issued or provided. It's merely a continuation of you know, what's already occurred. Does anybody have any questions?
There being none? Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the item? Back to council, comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilman Foley?
Yes.
Councilman Grubbs?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 4-0. The public hearing portion of the meeting is now closed. Let me backtrack to item 14, report from Kemper Sports on the Cypress Head Golf Course.
I believe Kemper has left. They will be rescheduled for later in the month.
Thank you very much. Item 15, Golf Advisory Board report.
Same.
I think it's the same thing.
Okay, so skipping what I skipped didn't hurt us for skipping because we're skipping it anyway, if you can figure that out now.
So you want to skip it?
Yeah, let's
Skip-
do that.
yeah, skip
Let's go to
some.
item 18, which is next on the regular agenda. Item 18 is the fiscal year 24-25 budget discussions, preliminary capital improvements plan, capital outlay, and fleet replacement. Wayne, who do we have presenting?
Me, Wayne Clark, city manager.
Thank you.
I'm gonna present. There's plenty of staff here. We have all the department heads here. If you have questions on specific projects or the finance team is here as well. We can get the PowerPoint on the screen. All right, so when you go through the capital expenditures that we have, this is something we typically do ahead of the actual operating budget in the earlier part of the year, looking at what our priorities were when we set this together. So I put in here for you, this is really what we are looking to do. There's a lot of projects in here that deal with resilience. We had a bad storm a couple of years ago. We know we had older parts of town that weren't developed with the correct stormwater standards in place, and so we've put a lot of emphasis on resilience projects. So in addition to stormwater actual projects related to improving drainage, you've got public facilities that are being elevated, whether it's lift stations, a wastewater treatment plant, other city properties and facilities that resilience projects are in there. And both infrastructure and facility maintenance, there had been in the past some incidences of deferred maintenance, which ends up costing us more in the long run. So as we went into this budget, we wanted to emphasize taking care of the infrastructure that we have so that it lasts its life and is taken care of. The other thing I just put at the bottom is year one projects. If you put money in year one projects get executed by the staff. We complete them. In the past, there had been a little bit of money put in year one that was almost like a savings into future years, and that's not really how 5-year capital improvement programs work. So we have shifted the focus towards if it's in year one, whatever is, you'll see as we go through the presentation, whatever is in there, that stage is what gets done. So start with the capital improvements. These are basically construction projects, and they're broken down by the funds that are paying for them. So this is your water and sewer utility funds. There's a couple of highlights in here. I'd be happy to answer any questions as we go along through here. Leisure Circle may be one of those you're aware of. There have been some complaints. Back on the far east side of the road, there was a dip in the road that we kept patching and patching and patching. One of the things we've been trying to do on the east side, it's the oldest part of town, it's the oldest infrastructure. You've seen a lot of projects where we're lining the sewer in there. We're trying to do things that do minimal disruption. It limits our costs, but in certain cases that's not going to be feasible. We've actually got to dig up the roads, dig up the pipes and replace them. So a couple of them you see there, the Leslie and Leisure, are two of those that couldn't be handled through a simple lining project. So a number of routine water sewer type projects in that list, but if you have any questions, just stop me and we'll answer all your questions. We put them in a map in the event anybody wanted to see where they were located. Stormwater, we mentioned one of our higher priorities in here, a couple of big ones, the Cambridge Canal project. That's the construction of our the big Cambridge facility. So the design, you've approved money this year, so it's under design now. That would build the improvements to it. We've shown it full funding. We believe we will get a decent amount of that money back from FEMA. So at this point, it's going to be budgeted at that amount, but we will probably get reimbursed for a large amount. South winds, I just want to draw attention to that. That's a closed basin. So when it flooded, we had a lot of issues there where fortunately the Atlantic High School let us during Ian put a little bit of water into their dry pond to help lower the water levels. But that's one of our few isolated basins where there's nowhere for the water to go. So this creates an outfall to get the water out of there in the future. So it won't stand up. You also see some of the acquisition projects. So there's approximately 50 or so, I think, homes that we have that are to acquire and demolish, so they will no longer flood. Most of these are at least 75% FEMA. Some of them will be as much as 90%. Again, those dollars are total cost, but in the end, the total cost to the people of Port Orange will be lower than that. There's the map of them also. General construction, so this is most of the stuff that comes from general fund. A little bit of everything in here, a decent number of parks projects. I know as with the parks bond being out there, we had a couple people asking on social media and others, what do you do with parks besides this bond? You can see there's routine capital maintenance used. This is not the first year there's been capital projects related to parks in here, so that's a standard that we do. So those are some of the highlights. And then the city center field rehab, we put money in to design it this year. That will be the construction to fix it so we can put those fields back in use. So that's a highlight project of this section. Another map. The transportation list, most of this is the stuff when you see community development staff get up here and talk about the TPO, it's the stuff that Councilman Foley works on with us as well. So those are the projects that are out there in the different phases. The two I want to draw attention to here, the 9 and 10, sidewalk repairs and road resurfacing, those are both actually public works and engineering projects. Typically what we fund in those two items is just what the gas tax gives you. So you get about $200,000 less in each one of those lines. What we have found with our new alignment of staff and that power that they bring to executing construction projects, there's a lot more need out there than the funds. If we give them $300,000, that's what they'll spend, but they proved this year with the extra funding, they did over $600,000 worth of work. So what we've included in here is $200,000 extra for sidewalk and road out of general fund to continue to catch up on that need. Now eventually we will stabilize. We will get caught up on the backlog because there were a number of years where we didn't do this at the pace that they're doing it now, and so that number will come back down, but this will allow us to get these things taken care of quicker in that area. If that is an area where council may not want to put the focus, let me know, but that we did that based on comments from last year, thinking that would help move along some important things for the community.
Most of those things are things that we've seen. Do me a favor, the Charles Street Railroad Crossing, elaborate on what we're trying to do there.
So every year, we're required to pay for when they go in and fix the railroad crossing. So they just make us pay for it, and we pay.
They fixed it,
yeah.
you send us the bill.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we budget for that in advance because they're nice enough to let us know that they're going to do it and charge us. So we take the opportunity to put money in the budget, pay for it.
Wayne, real quick, the sidewalk repairs versus the sidewalk bundle on that page. You just want to touch on why those are two different lines.
Sidewalk repairs, existing sidewalks that are either roots, busted, wear, whatever, people driving on them, anything that's existing sidewalks. The bundle is gaps, filling in gaps in areas where they're not, and there's a decent number of those citywide. We actually do have a map if you'd like to see where all the little gaps are being filled in, but that fills in a lot of the areas where there's missing sidewalks. I think there's several of them that are helping, like we've got the Willow Run, isn't that where those are? And so some of them are going to help with school safety as well. So those are fill in sidewalks in some of the areas where we heard about earlier tonight. Thank you for asking. Capital outlay, this is usually buying stuff where the other things are projects. It's not that clear of a delineation, but it's generally that. There's a number of projects in here that are various things that we do to do our jobs. Probably the biggest thing here is the 2 elevators that are out there. I don't know if you want me to pause and let you have a couple comments on that, or do you want to
You
get
can
to
continue through. I'll talk about the elevators later.
it? Okay, a couple other things just help, like just for interesting purpose, what the sod cutters do. So if we want to save sod on certain fields, you send hand crews out there to do it with a shovel. It's hard to cut even sod and lay it back down flat. The sod cutter cuts it consistent and even, so it's easy to pick up, move, and put back down. There's a couple of things that are, you can, I'm trying to think what else, the bollard lights. If you've seen the bollard lights around city center, some of them are busted up. They don't make those anymore, so we can't find parts to fix them with. So we're going to replace them with ones that we can going forward. The rest of them are all fairly self-explanatory. Under these two, so the Y capital fund, a couple things there to improve the building. We have an old fire suppression system that needs to be upgraded. The phone system is 1990s vintage and lacks sufficient cybersecurity protections on it, so we need to get that upgraded. Even if we do renovations on this building in the long run, what we do there will be something we move with us to the renovated facility. Fleet is really part of capital outlay. It's just there's enough in it to make it different. This is just all the vehicles we're replacing, the way we got it color coded. If it's bold, it's new. If there's an asterisk next to it, it's a piece of heavy equipment. So all the ones that are not bolded are just replacements of existing. So they're in a plan, 5, 7, 10, however many years life we give them. They've come to the end of their life and they're getting replaced. The fire engine on there it's like a 3-year lead time. So that's out here now that the fire engine actually works. But we're looking to replace it. So we have 5 fire engines, and then we have the 3 backups that are there. This will be there when its time comes. It'll be ready to go. You'll occasionally see the difference in truck costs. So Parks has a different cost for its trucks than over here where you see Public Works or others. Those departments are getting trucks with lifts on them. They have cranes. They have heavier suspension for towing heavier items. So there's different costs because there's different features on some of the trucks. We just didn't go into tremendous amount of detail on it, but that's why you don't see the exact same number as you're going through those things. A number of police vehicle replacements, including non-marked cars for detectives. A couple other vehicles in these areas.
I know we've got a lot of, well, there you go. I was going to talk about revenue. We've got that coming up in the...
So the main workshop comes up in July 23. It's tentatively set as the night we go over the operating budget. Anything you have concerns with tonight or want us to change or work on, we'll be happy to get you stuff in the interim too. We can bring it up at any council meeting you want. But we will confirm we've got capital the way you want it on the 23rd. It's tentatively set for you to do a max millage that night. We know everybody's here. If for some reason that doesn't work, we have a backup on the 30 just to make sure we get it done by the state requirements to do so. You see the 2 budget hearings in there. One of the reasons for having capital come to you a little early is personnel is your biggest cost. We pay that. It's most of it is contractually obligated. We have our bargaining units that we have contracts with. We contract what I would consider, it's still labor, it's just other people's labor. So like Waste Pro that does our trash pickup, the people that mow the medians, there's still people doing work. We're just paying them under contracts. Those contracts have escalator clauses. So your personnel cost is, absent changing your personnel levels, is somewhat fixed. So that's your biggest amount. So capital becomes where you spend the most money other than that. So this is how you make an impact on the community by the stuff that everybody can see and participate in. So it's pretty important, and it's a fairly large, I think it's like $20+ million in this year for those projects. So if there's any questions you have, anything you want me to go back over, or anything all of our guys who know the projects better than me can help with, we'll be happy to share that with you.
I appreciate that. Next week, the property appraiser, Mr. Bartlett, will be doing his valuations. I'll be attending that. I want to see exactly where we are with the property valuations, and I will come back and share that with everybody as soon as he presents it to us.
I think we're expecting what might be better than, I'm hoping, a half full cup.
Of course, property valuations, that's a mixed bag. We all want our property values to appreciate at a nice rate. And of course, we adjust the tax rate downward approximately, because 5 times 4 is the same as 4 times 5. But the other problem with property value appreciation is it also causes insurance rates to go up. So because you have to insure at a higher value, so it's not a it's a mixed bag. but I'll bring that information back for everybody. Do we have any questions of Wayne before because I know we'll be digging in deeper with all of this at the budget workshop, but do we have any questions or comments on this right now?
Yeah,
With just what's been basically presented.
So I met with Wayne for lunch today, and we were talking about the City Hall elevators line on the capital request on page 14. So as I think everyone knows, we've got 2 elevators out there, but one has not been functioning now for like 3 months. The other one needs, I believe Wayne said, about $70,000 in repairs, and even more to, because I understand there's a state certification that's going to expire in August next year. So, my personal belief is that we don't need 2 elevators. It's not required by code. It seems like a very large price tag for redundancy on something, and I want you to think how much has changed since those elevators were installed. How many people pay their utility bill online? Utilities is actually here on the first floor anyway. Permits are done online. Everything has gone digital, and I feel like that having 2 elevators and spending that much money on it is a redundancy we don't need in the budget.
Think about it, but the other problem we might have difficulty with is we also have to be ADA requirement. So if you have any maintenance on that elevator, that exposes us.
I understand that for sure. That's something to discuss more perhaps on what that risk reward is. Elevators can be repaired
Let's
pretty
make sure that
quickly.
is a topic for conversation for a council decision at the budget.
We'd be happy to put together more depth on the risk reward of what that is. I know we had talked about at some point this building itself being substantially renovated, but it probably doesn't happen fast enough we would certainly not have our certification
You can't
next year.
afford to do everything all at once.
Right, depending how long, I guess the real question would be how long would it take to fix an elevator if it went down, because there are several restaurants I can think of that have one elevator that have been down or would go down, and I don't know if that opens them to liability or if there's a time frame in which you're allowed to fix that. There's probably more things, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at a little harder.
We'd be happy to bring you back more depth to help with that.
Any other items? Very good. This was a discussion item only, so that brings us to item 19, additional items, city attorney report.
Nothing to report.
Excellent report, just like, well, you know what? We do have one thing to report. The reason why you're here tonight. City Attorney Matt Jones is not here tonight because he's a new father. So congratulations to Matt Jones. City Manager report.
I don't have anything other than Mike did clarify that committee we were talking about earlier, the school crossing evaluation committee. He's got a little bit more information he found today, so we'll send that out to you tomorrow. He actually has every single member. It is a sheriff's committee, so I was wrong. I just want to make sure everybody knew I didn't have that right. So Mike did get that extra information today, and we'll send you the details on it. But it is a sheriff's committee, and we know who the membership is of it, and you go to them to get things put on their agenda.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Is that open to the public?
I do not know. And
We'll
they
find
said,
out.
Mike said no.
Hey,
Okay.
I can do a Jim Penn report too,
All right.
after River City.
Council committee reports, River to Sea, TPO.
Yeah, actually, more so because of my executive committee position on that board. But in my email today, I received a draft of the lease for the River to Sea TPO that we talked about. So we'll be reviewing that tomorrow at the executive committee meeting. Also, I don't know why I can't seem to get these words out of my mouth. The other thing I want to say is that at the last meeting, the River to Sea TPO has been discussing about a name change and a rebranding. Now that we encompass all of Flagler and Volusia, to rename to be the Volusia Flagler TPO. So we'll see. That process takes time. There's a lot of expenditures that go with that. The list she had was incredibly long, but with us moving into a new building and with the change in the territory covered, it seemed like a good time to go ahead and look into doing that rebrand. So it'll probably be known as the Volusia Flagler TPO in the coming months.
Okay. Scott, you said you had something on the general pension to add?
Yeah, we had we might as well go ahead and report on it. We had a general employee pension board meeting yesterday, just to report back to council. Current market value of the plan is about a little over $38 million. April wasn't a great month. Actually, there was a 2.7% down month. However, the annual yield so far is over 8.38%, so we're meeting our goals and objectives there. I did want to mention to council that the board took action yesterday and terminated Highland Capital, which had been one of our investment groups for the plan. They were meeting benchmarks, but were being significantly outperformed by other competitive interests. So we took the recommendation of our Southeast Advisory Committee with Jeff Swanson and terminated them, and taking on a different vendor that we feel will better perform for them. But Highland was with us for a long time, and we let them know that, you know, hey, in the future we still appreciate your interest, and it's not like you're off the table for forever. But that was a good action on the part of the pension board. I just wanted to bring to you, because while it's not a pleasant thing to have to do, it's the right thing to have to do, and so I think it's good when pension boards will follow the advice of those advisors. So that's all I got.
It's accountability. Appreciate it. With that, any other business come before us this evening? There being none, we will meet again in 2 weeks. We'll see you all then. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.